Okay. Well, that last attempt was a fail. I didn't realize that my microphone was off, or it was unplugged, I should say. So I had to plug in again. I hope it's working now. Um, Let me know if it's working. How are we doing now? Okay, it's working. All right. Let me quickly take this other one off my channel. It's a very professional setup that we have here. Okay. I don't know if I'm going to list this one. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll just save them all onto the channel anyway. But I didn't realize my microphone was unplugged. Anyway, let's start again. Hello, my friends. How is everyone doing today? Hope you're doing well. Today, I'd like to do a little bit of what I like to call meandering Wikipedia research, where I start with a question and sort of just start clicking links on Wikipedia. See where it takes me, see what stuff we can learn together. Hello, A. Is that's a long-time viewer. Thunderwolf says maybe raise the volume up a notch. You know, I have this volume up as high as it'll go. That's the problem. I don't know how to increase the volume or make it any louder than it already is. So, yes, Tinfoil Scholar says early lifetime. It's always the interesting section of a Wikipedia page is looking at the early life of suspicious individuals. So what sort of got me interested to begin with was there was a thread on 4chan's political board that showed some of the videos that have been put out by a YouTube channel called Vox. And here's the YouTube channel, Vox. And this, so they have a series on Vox. Vox is a sort of a Zoomer news network. They're akin to BuzzFeed. They appeal to a younger crowd, sort of a crowd that considers themselves to be tech savvy, hip, trendy, that kind of a crowd. And Meow Purr says Bill Gates' mother is worth looking at. I'll look at some of the things you guys suggest, but I wanted to talk about Vox because Vox is part of a network of media outlets and publications and investment companies. And I think just with a lot of these things, when you look at departments, so to speak, of the mainstream. You look at some of the companies and outlets that pop up from the mainstream establishment and obviously come from lots of money. They're the complete opposite of something grassroots or organic. They're obviously something that a lot of money has inflated, and it comes out of this very deep establishment. If you take something that comes from that and you start pulling on it, you start pulling the threads of it, you look at who is behind it, who it's connected to, who's funding it, it always brings you into the same web, interconnected network of big money, big finance, interdimensional harmony. Says similar to Now This, in addition to BuzzFeed. Yes, they like to present themselves as being more in touch with the average person. They like to use colloquialisms. They like to talk in slang. They like to act like they're hip and like they're just, one of us, one of the younger generation. When in reality, huge money is behind things like this. So if you look at this series that Vox put out called Glad You Asked, the premise of something like this is, that they're answering questions that people ask them, that real life people out there are interested in. And it seems like their first season of this series, so to speak, was making an attempt to have a broad appeal, or making an attempt to answer questions that people might actually ask. There's episodes on, should we be worried about GMOs? That's a valid question. I'm not a big fan of the idea of genetically modified organisms. How does the internet work? Okay, fine. That's an interesting question. Why are we so lonely? Well, that depends on the person. I guess it shows what audience they're appealing to. Is beauty culture hurting us? Now that's really showing their target demographic. And remember that, by the way, this is their target demographic. Young women, generally speaking, and young men, I'm sure, with things like, how does the internet work? Is it wrong to fly? Why do memes matter? What happens when we die? Okay, fine. Interesting questions. Good enough. But when we go to season 2, the tone of these questions shifts dramatically. How racist am I? It's episode 1 of season 2. Are we automating racism? Does my neighborhood determine my future? Which, of course, is about racism, systemic racism. So we're 3 for 3 now. Is meritocracy a myth? Also, obviously, you see the little picture of the little black kid with his graduation cap on. Is racism making people sick? So we're 5 for 5 here. And the last one is just the official trailer. And YouTube is behind this as well. YouTube is one of the sponsors or promoters of this. So we've gone from, glad you asked, let's talk about GMOs and the internet and memes and what happens when you die. Season 2 is just Racism, 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 racism. And that is quite suspicious. And remember, the type of person that this is appealing to are the young college-aged, trendy type of white people, typically. And okay, not only did the questions that they're asking change, which talks about discover why we cry, how the internet works. This is their description. Even the description of it changed. These people share in their reporting as they examine timely questions around the impact of systemic racism on our communities and in our daily lives, from revealing how housing segregation affects our futures to the impact of racism on our bodies. Their intersecting journeys will reveal just how crucial and empowering racial justice is to our entire society. So, if you've been wondering, over the last 2 or so years, 2-3 years at the most, if you've been wondering, is this whole racism propaganda being pushed more and more? Has it really been kicked into overdrive? Is this whole race conflict and anti-white rhetoric? That's really what it is, anti-white rhetoric. I personally need to get out of the habit of calling it just like racism, discussions on racism or whatever, because it's not a discussion on racism. It's a discussion about how bad white people are. So I need to get into the habit of being clear about that, and I hope you do as well. That's important. But if you've been wondering over the past few years, has the media really been kicked into overdrive with their anti-white rhetoric? Yes. And this should be at least one bit of proof here. Smogland says, what is the reason for the left's focus on the word bodies? That is an interesting question, and one that I've considered myself. They love talking about black bodies and bodies of color and things of that nature when they refer to people. And it's a bizarrely dehumanizing way of speaking, and I don't know what their angle would be at that, besides just continuing their murky water says, because it is gender neutral. Possibly. But I think it is more, I think there's probably more to it than that, but I don't have anything really thoughtful to say about it. But anyway, seeing something like this makes me wonder, it made me wonder who the fuck is behind Vox. And there's nothing surprising that I found, but it's always interesting to see, like I was saying earlier, how these things connect. When you begin to pull on the threads of these sorts of outlets, you really find the whole web, the interconnected web of big money and establishment power. So Vox is an American news website owned by Vox Media. The website was founded in April of 2014 by Ezra Klein, who you can guess his early life section on Wikipedia. Look at that shit-eating grin. Matt Iglesias, who... Oh, that's weird. His paternal grandfather was of Spanish-Cuban background, and his 3 other grandparents were of Eastern European... Oh. Another Chosenite. So we've got 2 Chosenites. And let's see the third. Melissa Bell. She attended Georgetown in Washington, D.C. Basically, anyone living in Washington, D.C. is already suspect because that's just a big government town. Nothing about her early life, but I wouldn't be surprised, especially with her hanging out with 2, the chosen people come in flocks, essentially. You don't have a shiksa that gets in the in crowd with the Chosenites in projects like this, generally speaking. So let's just say 3 for 3. It's noted for its concept of explanatory journalism, which is an interesting concept. It basically is, instead of reporting facts, it's telling you what to think about facts. It's journalism plus. Schudson says explanatory journalists aid democracy. Who came up with this concept of explanatory journalism? Someone named Michael Schudson, who also looks chosen. So they have a show on Netflix. Anyway, so the owner is Vox Media. The Equalizer says it is narrative building. Yes, it's narrative building, and it's the opposite of unbiased fact reporting. It's the type of writing that builds an entire context of biased perspective, of opinion, and a leading sort of a context building that leads you to a certain conclusion, and then it drops in a couple of facts, and it makes the reader believe. It's the best kind of propaganda, I think, because it then makes the reader believe that what they've been told in terms of the opinion-based context that they were given and the perspective that has been shoved down their throat is just based on these facts. The facts had to be explained. It gives them this understanding of the facts that leads them to a certain conclusion without them thinking that this is just an opinion, that this is just someone's perspective, that they've been convinced of something. And it's in my opinion, some of the best propaganda because, I've had debates with people, especially younger leftist type people, who truly believe that their political opinions are based on science. And that, I think, is one of the best examples of this kind of explanatory journalism, or what the goal of something like explanatory journalism is to get people to believe that their opinions, that their perspective, their values, these subjective things that are really based on something internal to us and subjective to us, is actually based on objective reasoning and science and facts. It blurs the line between fact and opinion, and it allows these journalists to, like I said, quote unquote, explain the facts in a way that makes the reader believe that the opinions that they're getting out of that article are purely based on facts. So it's a way of hiding one's bias and communicating to people a bias that then is not seen as a bias. Faustian Spirit says, we just banned critical race theory in Idaho. Very nice. Congratulations. So anyway, Vox Media is the owner. They're based in Washington, D.C. and New York City. That already shows establishment ties. But here's the interesting part, in my opinion. Oh, by the way, look at the key people behind Vox Media. We were 3 for 3 for Vox, the website, but Vox Media, Wasserstein, Bankoff. That's all you need to see. Here's Bankoff, the owner of Vox Media. Have you seen a more chosen face? His father owned a jewelry business. So, okay, so here's the interesting part. Vox Media owns editorial brands, primarily The Verge, Vox, SB Nation, Eater, Polygon, and New York. New York further incorporates the websites Intelligencer, The Cut, Vulture, The Strategist, Curbed, and Grub Street. The former Recode was integrated into Vox, while Racked was shut down. So anyway, what a company like Vox Media does is they create a number of what they call brands, which are really different media outlets that pose as news network or news outlets. And each of them has a different slant or a different angle to them that is meant to appeal to different demographics. For example, we've seen Vox already, but then there's Eater. It's a food and dining network. So it puts out news related to food. And I'm sure, I can guarantee, if you go and read the Eater, you will find that its reporting on food and restaurants will be threaded with anti-white rhetoric and things involving stuff like racism and inequality and whatnot. Polygon. It's a video game website. And I guarantee the same thing. You look at even just the image that they use on Wikipedia here. Vote for the most socially impactful game from last year. And you know what they mean by socially impactful. I mean, it's pretty, what they mean is anti-traditional, anti-white. That's what socially impactful means. So they have one for food, one for video games. New York. This is about life, culture, politics, and style generally. It's called a lifestyle magazine. So they have different brands of their propaganda posing as news that, like GB is saying, they all promote each other as well as authoritative sources, trying to give themselves false legitimacy and an air of prestige. All leftist rags do it. Yeah, it's a giant echo chamber that they create, and each mirror in this like funhouse of mirrors is angled differently to capture and bring in a different audience. So this is how they cast a wide net. And, the more you look into it, too. So NBC Universal gave them $200 million. NBC Universal is a giant owner of Vox Media. And NBC is owned by Comcast. Comcast is one of the biggest telecommunications companies in the United States. And look at who one of the owners here, Cohen. Roberts, who also, it's not a obviously chosen last name, but it's he appears, he has the right appearance, he fits the profile. And look at the board of directors. I mean, Fannie Mae executive, giant mortgage company, hospital CEO, executive at Advanced Publications, former CEO of DuPont, former chairman and CEO of the Bank of New York Mellon, CEO of Pepsi Cola. At the top, it's like you get these groups that trickle down from the top, from the most connected of the establishment, and the most obviously establishment entities, and they dribble down to the point where you get to something like Vox that bills itself as being trendy and grassroots and hip and anti-establishment. So Laugh Track editor says the left is great at coming up with positive or innocuous words for harmful things. Explanatory journalism. Yeah, their skill in inventing euphemisms is truly spectacular. So that's just something that I thought was interesting. You start to look into these networks, these networks of connections, where I think that it starts. You start to get to the point where you look at something and you see something like Vox. You see these videos on YouTube that are being promoted by YouTube and trying to build themselves as. I mean, look at one of these videos, just real quick.
The past year has been and continues.
So you get someone like Christoph Halberson, or whatever. He's billed as the host. He's a young guy who talks like a effeminate soy boy, and the audience starts to think like, this guy could be my study buddy, and for my social justice class at university, this guy's just like my friends. Like, I could trust him. And this is the face that they give to something that is, in reality, A donated $5. Thank you. Thank you very much. A says, do you think they are seeing diminishing returns on their anti-traditional investments / projects? What happens when we reach full saturation? Big finishing moves, South Africa style, collapse, or neither? That I'm not exactly sure about the last question. I do think, however, that the idea that they're having diminishing returns, I don't think so, because I think what's happened is essentially there's like a genetic divide between people like us and people who are fully engulfed and embedded in the propaganda that they've put out. And they're not trying to reach new people. I think what they're trying to do is solidify the divide even more and radicalize the people who are, radical on both sides, to the point where there will be a conflict and there will be enough people on either side who are willing to fight each other that chaos will occur. And out of that chaos, they will be able to, mold society even further toward their end goals, their end vision. So I don't think they're trying to reach more people or propagandize more people. I mean, the fact is, at least in my experience, I'd say about 50 to 60% of people out there are truly NPCs. And I mean, they could be decent people. They could be, the type of person that you can have as a coworker, that you can have a good conversation with, that thank you, I really appreciate the donation. So they're the type of people that you can have a conversation with, that aren't going to jump down your throat or try to proselytize or convince you about anything that's political. They're just apolitical, common people, and they're not bad. So that's like 50 to 60%. They're just not interested. But then there's about, I'd say, 25 to 30% of people, maybe even more than that, who are really wrapped up in this stuff, like being anti-white, about how bad white people are, about how horribly oppressed non-whites are, about how unfair society is. They really have the chip on their shoulder, and they're really, passionate about these types of issues. And then the remaining, I don't know, these are just estimates off the top of my head, but the remaining like 10% are people like us. I think that there are more people like us than we might know. That there's more people like us than we could tell, because a lot of people like us just keep to themselves. They appear to be one of the 50 to 60% of people who are totally disinterested. But all they need to do is get that 25-30% of people who are agitated, who have a chip on their shoulder, who believe society is unfair, that white people oppress black and brown people, that all of these things, all the disaffected, wannabe oppressed people. All they need to do is get those people riled up enough and radical enough that they're willing to go out and do things, for that chaos to occur and for them to control that chaos. But anyway, where was I before? To just wrap this up, you've got the person like this.
The COVID-19 pandemic put a spotlight on racial disparities in health.
In the U.S., the death rate among black people is twice as high compared to white people.
Black Americans in particular are dying at double the...
But the disproportionate effect of this virus is just one part of a long list of racial gaps in health.
So you got a guy like this who's like,
would I be able to get a subway map?
He's doing the video like, he's just doing the video from his phone, guys. He's just like us. He's just like Apollonian Germ on YouTube, who uploads videos from his phone, and he's got his mask on, and he's on the subway. Oh my God, he's just like us. He's taking the subway. You've got that kind of a presentation. And that presentation to the trendy 20-something kid is more easily believed and digested because they think that that's the person who's behind this. It's just this guy who's taking the subway and wearing his mask and filming from his phone. Wow, he's just like us. When in reality, that this is like a tentacle arm that comes out of the deepest oligarch run establishment and shapeshifts itself. Like, imagine this giant octopus creature, this what's his name, Lovecraftian horror of a creature that is just a shapeless, gruesome, grotesque octopus, and it wiggles out one of its slimy arms up from its lair, and it shapeshifts the end of that slimy tentacle into this soy boy with the mask on and filming from his phone. And it shows that to people, and they think, oh wow, he's just like us. But if you follow that slimy tentacle arm, you end up looking at fucking buildings like this downtown, and that's the hive, that's the lair of creeps like this. So, and there's one more. Oh god, you guys are gonna hate me for this. Did you guys know that Spot 'em, Got 'em, and Pooh Shiesty linked up? Need it or keep it. Now, where do you think someone like this came from? Who do you think is behind someone like this? Why does someone like this have 42 million views on YouTube? I mean, have you seen anything more absurd than this? Look at these people. And, it's not hard to see who's behind someone like this. Mugen says, Sneed. It's not hard to see who's behind someone like this. Just go to their Wikipedia page. This was his hit song, Beatbox, Spot 'em, Got 'em song. One of his labels is In Grooves. In Grooves is a music marketing service and distribution platform or company owned by Universal Music Group. Universal Music Group is one of the biggest music companies out there. Owned by these massive corporate conglomeration companies. So, Hop Up Perspective says orc music. Yes. And Urcraft says the Chinese are behind all this. I don't think so. But, even if China owns 20% of Universal Music Group, but really you have to ask yourself who owns China. China is not this independent entity that people believe it is. China is just as controlled. So I actually didn't look too far into this one yet. I wonder if any of these guys are chosen. I bet that they were chosen people. Vivendi. Is that guy chosen? Or is he just French? Oh. My wife's not going to like that comment. But even if this guy's not himself chosen, look, he went to Harvard. He's very well connected. We all know who runs the order at the top. So just being involved in these top level corporations. China has been controlled by the same elite as in the West since the 1700s. Probably since before that. Have you ever heard of a term, Rothschilds of the East? The Sassoon family. This is switching gears a bit, but the Sassoon family was known as the Rothschilds of the East due to the immense wealth that they accumulated in finance and trade. It's a family of Baghdadi Jews. Originally from Baghdad, they moved to Bombay, India, and then spread to China. The Sassoons were one of the wealthiest families in the world. And, I mean, according to the Wikipedia, I've read this before a bit, the family itself kind of diminished. But once you have a you-know-who-ish, a chosen family in charge of massive markets, like the market of China, the market of India, massive markets that they controlled, it doesn't ever slip into the hands of a goy. It doesn't just because this family in particular is no longer the head family of this enterprise. You can guarantee, I would bet all the money that I have, all of the cryptocurrency that I have, that this did not just suddenly fall into the hands of the goyim. Adam says the shampoo maker. Probably. Petrodollar says PRC, People's Republic of China, is the prototype for the rest of the world. Talmudic hijinks never ends. True. But anyway, origins. This guy, the founding Jew of the family, were the chief treasurers to the pashas of Baghdad and southern Iraq. His sons, David and Joseph, fled from a new and unfriendly wali. In 1828, David went to the Persian Gulf port of Bushehr, and in 1832 to Bombay, India, with his large family. They built an international business. He cemented his family's dominant position in the Sino-Indian opium trade. Of course, profiting on decadence, even back at this time, profiting on destroying people's lives. The family's businesses in China and Hong Kong especially were built to capitalize on the opium business. So, the East is no stranger to you-know-who-ish influence and control. Boomy says China doesn't want to be feminized. You don't think so? I don't know. A lot of the stuff I see coming out of Asian media is just as feminized, if not more, than in the West. But and speaking of feminized, I've recently been listening to the music of the Voice Squad. This is a shifting the topic pretty radically, but I'm gonna end up closing the stream pretty soon. I've been on for 45 minutes. I wanted to go a little longer, but I started too late today, and I'm kind of hungry. I got to eat before I go to work. By the way, before I end the stream, if anyone else wants to send in super chats, there's a link in the description. I greatly appreciate your donations, and the more I get, the more I'll be able to spend time on doing streams like this. So if you want to send in super chats, I take them on Streamlabs now because YouTube won't allow me to monetize myself. But anyway, speaking of this dastardly influence of the you-know-who's, and switching gears to some music, I've been listening to, instead of this guy, makes you want to vomit, I've been listening to the Voice Squad, and they did an amazing rendition of The Parting Glass. And I've played some of the Voice Squad on stream before, but I want to show you guys this song. We'll watch it together real quick, and pay attention to a few things. Pay attention to their posture, to their facial expressions, to just the way that they're presenting and holding themselves. And not only all that, but the power of their voices. And then I'm going to show you something after this in comparison. And by the way, also pay attention to how old these men are while still being able to belt it out this well. Petrodollar donated $10. Thank you. Petrodollar, thank you. He says, thank you, AG. I say, thank you, Petrodollar. Really appreciate it. Means a lot. And if also I have crypto, if anyone wants to donate in crypto, but I'm going to stop shilling for myself.
Of all the money that e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm I've ever done, alas, it was to none but me. And all that I've done for want of wit to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. If I had money enough to spend and leisure time to sit a while, there is a fair maid in this town that surely has me heart beguiled. Her So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all.
Okay, I'm not going to show the whole thing. But, you know, if you noticed, these men are serious, but they're still singing quite passionately. They don't do a bunch of crazy flair stuff. They're not, you know, like a lot of the singers these days, they're not squirming around, and they're not showy. They're just singing. They have great posture. They're standing there with, you know, a solemn look on their faces. They're just singing well, and look at how old these people are. They have great voices. Their voices are clear, they're loud, they're resonating, and it's just a great performance. But then you compare it, and by the way, how many people know of the Voice Squad? Even people who enjoy Irish music, most people that I've talked to, Petrodollar says humble. Yes, humble. These people are humble. They just want to stand like men, good postures, with a serious look on their face, and sing a great song. And how many people, even people who appreciate Irish music, Irish folk music that I know of, I mean, maybe it's different in Ireland. I'm sure it's different in Ireland. But in America, even people who say they like Irish music, they don't know the Voice Squad. I didn't know the Voice Squad, and I was raised by a family that enjoys Irish music. And I never heard of these guys, when these guys should be as well known as any. Like, they should be as well known as the Beatles, as far as I'm concerned. They're that good. But then you look up this clown, and this person, this Ed Sheeran clown, he is more well known. He's like 100 times, 1,000 times more well known, and 1,000 times is probably conservative in the estimate, than the Voice Squad. And yet, look at the way he performs this. I don't know which one to click on, because I watched a few of his performances to see which one was the worst. But maybe this one's the worst.
Hey, I'm Ed Sheeran, and before I get into playing a few...
Look at how he presents himself.
I spent it in good company, and all the harm that ever I'd done, alas, it was to none but me.
Like, what the hell happened to music and performance when you go from old men, back straight up and down, great posture, belting it out, you know, clear, ringing voices, to this guy who's... Like, that's what he sounds like, and that's what he looks like. And this guy's promoted in the media. Just about everybody knows his name.
And all I've done for want of wits.
Look at that. This is the image of a man singing and performing today. This is the image that the media wants to give you. And look at the people who watch him. Look at these guys. This is their audience. And this woman in particular. Right here. Yeah. Great job, Ed. Great job, Ed. And that, like, this woman watching the Voice Squad would probably feel offended by how powerful and masculine their voices are. This woman would be shocked by the power and masculinity of the performance of the Voice Squad. And she's sitting here watching Ed Sheeran. And she loves it. She eats it up. And I wonder, just as the last thing I'll do, I wonder who's behind this guy promoting. Oh my god. Is this guy derpy enough? Why is he promoted? I hate to attack a fellow redhead, but what the hell? What the hell? So who promoted this guy? This, because this relates indirectly to what I was talking about before with the you-know-who's behind the media today and what they try to promote to the average person. Who's his label, I wonder? Asylum. Warner Music. Elliot Rabinovitz. Of course, the you-know-who's want a guy like this to be the face of like white folk music these days. Pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. So these are how they present white guys in music, in the folk music scene. And this is how they present black dudes throwing around money, stacks of money that are more than the average person makes in 6 months. So nothing good comes out of the media, and all of the media is interconnected. That's the moral of this stream, I suppose. All the media has a chosen web to it. Anyway, time for me to go. Time for me to get some food, and I'll be at work driving the old tow truck again tonight. To end the stream, I'll play a good version of the song all the way through. Thank you all for showing up, and I really appreciate those who donated. Thank you very much. And somebody has given me quite generous donations in the form of Litecoin. Whoever donated Litecoin to me, I thank you so much. It really means a lot. I'm gonna hold them because we all know Litecoin's going to at least 400 this cycle. So thank you very much. That's whoever's done that. It's really appreciated. And to everyone else, to Petrodala, to everyone else who showed up. See you again next time. Thank you for coming, and hope you have a good day. Oh, last thing I'll say is this video, despite the fact that it's the best studio version of the song on YouTube, they messed up the title. It's not The Parting Glance. It's The Parting Glass. So, good night. Enjoy. Be with you all.
Of all the money e'er I had, I spent it in good company, and all the harm I've ever done, alas, it was to none but me. And all that I've done for want of wit to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. If I had money enough to spend, and leisure time to sit a while, there is a fair maid in this town that surely has me heart beguiled. Her rosy cheeks and ruby lips, I own she has me heart enthralled. So fill to me the parting glass. Good night and joy be to you all. Of all the comrades e'er I had, they are sorry for my going away, and all the sweethearts e'er I had, they'd wish me one more day to stay. But since it fell into my lot that I should rise and you should not, I gently rise and softly call.